Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Back from the Bigfoot cruise. Yes, I am back. And we had a great time. Met some fantastic people. Everybody on the boat was super friendly. Nikki and Marty from Gather Up Events organized this cruise. And they did an impeccable job. Impeccable. This was quite a memorable event. Two main speakers on the ship were Dr. Meldrum and I. And I'm sure many of you already heard, but I'm going to talk about it a bit. So the first day on the cruise, Angie and I are walking down the buffet for dinner. This is like 4 hours after we got on the ship, and Dr. Meldrum, Jeff, is walking down the aisle. I walked up to him and gave him a big hug and said, "Hey, I'm glad you're here." And then he said, "Oh, Dave, my wife never comes to this." And he introduced me to his wife, Angie to his wife. And I need to say that Dr. Meldrum and I have some highly differing views about the Bigfoot world. But of all the people in the Bigfoot world, I have the biggest disagreements with him. But you know what? When we're not on that stage, he is a perfect gentleman. And I am the same way to him. And if you followed our differences online, or we had a pretty big blow up in Ocala, and at the end I stopped everything. I said, "Hey, hold on. People need to understand something. That there's nobody, no single person in the Bigfoot world that has done more for the topic than Jeff Meldrum." And I meant that because he brought his scientific background to the topic. He opened the eyes of many people. Hey, you know, maybe this is real. So Jeff did a lot that people don't acknowledge. So I saw him that first day. Everything's great. And the way this cruise worked is Marty invited Jeff and I, and Thomas, a Native American speaker as well, to do excursions and to book people to go on excursions with you. And this was all done through the cruise. My excursions is we went to Icy Strait, Juneau, Alaska, got off the ship, went with a group, put on waders, and then went to small river, Big Creek, that salmon were running, Dolly Varden were running. And one of the videos that I put up here was 10 minutes long, and it showed the area that we were fishing, introduced you to the afternoon crowd. There were two groups, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And fishing was the same both times as far as catching fish. Salmon were coming up river, etc. Now, if you happen to watch that video, you might see some dead fish in the river. And unfortunately, that is the life of a salmon. They come up the river, they spawn, and they die. And somebody called them zombie fish on this trip. There are a lot of zombie fish when they're coming downstream. They're swimming, but they don't even seem to be alive. So everybody had an excursion. My first one was to Icy Strait. And that was in the morning. And then the second one was in the afternoon. Now that was the only excursions I did with and sponsored through the cruise. Then we had another obligation where we had to go to Juneau where there was a town hall meeting. And Marty and Nikki did a great job. Packed house. Way over 400 people. Way over. And it was at the Haida reservation building. And Marty tried to get a bigger room, but he couldn't. And at that, Rob Alley, good friend, super smart man, Dr. Rob Alley spoke. And he's an expert on Alaska Bigfoot. Did an outstanding job. And then at the end, we had Thomas, myself, Rob, and Dr. Meldrum sit up on stage and talk. Now, there were some inclinations early on that something might be wrong with Jeff. He ended up coming to the building really late. In time for everything, but just late. Didn't think much about it. He looked pretty pale. And then we sat up on stage and people asked us questions. And of course, people ask inquisitive questions, Dave, what do you think about Dr. Meldrum's opinion? And Dr. Meldrum, what do you think about Dave's opinion? And what about the DNA study? I spoke about it. And then Jeff gave the big thumbs down and got argumentative a little bit, but I didn't. And I just said, hey, when we leave here, we're friends. That's the way it's always going to be. I respect him for his accomplishments in life. I may not like his opinion about this topic, but you can't demean somebody who's had as many accomplishments in life as he has had. And I think that's one problem with our Bigfoot world. Everyone likes to attack somebody else. Call people names, etc. And unfortunately for Dr. Meldrum, there was 3 people who had the viewpoint of me, and he was sitting over at the end by himself as far as Bigfoot being a gorilla or an ape. Thomas, the Native American side, didn't believe that. Rob Alley, Dr. Rob Alley, didn't believe that. Of course, I don't. So he was a little overwhelmed. But nobody was rude. Everyone was polite. And there's a lot of great questions. The Q&A went for an hour. Rob Alley's presentation was about an hour and 15. It was extremely well organized. We had some great people come up and tell their stories about Alaska. And there were some strange ones. And I go back to a person in the Bigfoot world who you see on TV a lot. He hasn't really done any research, really hasn't done anything other than appear on TV as an expert, who said, oh, you know what, if I've been doing this for 25 years, I've never seen anything unusual or paranormal with the Bigfoot topic, and, Paulides is just talking out his hat. He obviously never went to Alaska because that room was filled with stories like that. And that's okay. It's okay. If you want to live with your life buried in the sand, if you don't want to read other people's books, just read any of Ron Moorhead's books. Read any of Scott Carpenter's books. The most and the biggest well-published books, and my books. Maybe you'll learn something. But if you don't like to read, you're not going to learn anything. So we did that. And Juneau was our last stop. After that, we got back on the ship. It was in port till 8:30, so we went out and had a nice meal in the town. Really good fish meal. Then we got on the ship about 8:30, and it took off. And we were going to have a cruise for a day and a half to Victoria, Canada, where we're going to stop on Vancouver Island. Well, the next day, at about noon, the captain got on the PA for the entire ship and said, we have an onboard emergency. And we're going to turn the ship around, go back to Ketchikan, which was the closest port at that time. He said that he had called for a helicopter from the Coast Guard and it was unavailable. So he had to turn the ship around and go to Ketchikan for a medical emergency. Well, that's not good. And right away, Marty, the head of the cruise, had told me that it was Jeff. And he was down in with the ship's physician. That morning, it was Jeff's turn to make his presentation. And when he went up on stage and started, he said, "Could somebody give me a bucket? I'm feeling sick." He goes, "I'm not seasick, something else is wrong." Got the bucket, went off stage, and went down to the physician's office. They determined that he was having a medical emergency of life-threatening value, and the ship was turned around. There's a lot of questions about whether he had a heart attack. No, he did not. And as we were about halfway back to Ketchikan, the Coast Guard decided to send one of their speed cutters, a fast boat, out to our ship, pick up Jeff, and speed him back to Ketchikan. Well, they took him back to Ketchikan. He was evaluated, and it was decided that he needs to be flown to Seattle, and he was flown immediately to Seattle. And then through the contacts I have, nobody has heard anything. And I've told my friends on the ship, I told everybody I knew, hey, you need to pray for Jeff. He's a good man. And again, differing views don't mean he's a bad person. Differing views don't mean that we shouldn't pray for him. So it's kind of the way that one went. So we were supposed to go to Victoria Island and spend 5 or 6 hours, get off to, Victoria, the city on Vancouver Island, tour the city, etc., etc. But there's something called the Jones Act. And it says that a ship that leaves the U.S. has to stop at a foreign port before it docks back into the same port that it left. So we had to go back down to Victoria, docked for like 10 minutes, and then pulled out and went on to Seattle. One of the most stupid laws I can imagine. And I don't know why Congress hasn't taken it on and changed it. But anyhow, everyone was very worried. Jeff was the talk of the town. Jeff is with his wife. She flew with him, traveled with him. And the dozens of conferences I've done with Jeff over the years, his wife was never there. So I'm very grateful that she was there with him on this one. So we turned around after the boat picked up Jeff, went back to, took the ship to Victoria, docked, came back, and then final destination was Seattle, where we got off, unloaded, went to Seattle International Airport, took a flight back here to Kalispell. Already had contacts with everybody on this that was friends with me, and I did not meet one person that said that they had a bad time on that ship. Not one. So that's pretty surprising. Now, give you kind of the review. The boat was called Quantum of the Seas. It was big. It was big. Big ship. Wasn't at capacity. A lot of people wearing masks. So part of the package on the ship included meals. And you could buy a drink package, alcohol and non-alcohol, for free drinks. And then there were a variety of restaurants, a sushi restaurant, an Italian restaurant, a steakhouse. And a group of us ate at the Italian restaurant, and I would say that was a 9 out of 10. Then we ate at a place called the Chop House, and I didn't think it was too good. Now the buffet, interesting. Since I was last on a ship about 10 years ago, since COVID, that's changed a lot. Now when you walk into the buffet, you walk by a series of sinks, and everybody has to go and wash your hands in the sink, which I think is a great idea. Everyone's touching the serving devices on the buffet. And over the week, I ate a couple breakfasts, several lunches, and several dinners at the buffet. Thought it was really good. Just me. Thought it was great. I've always liked buffets, so the vegetables, the salads, fresh, the meats, the steaks, the fish, good. And of course, the desserts, out of this world good. They had a dessert corner on essentially every meal. At breakfast, they had all kinds of croissants and pastries and things. And for lunch, they had cakes, cookies, puddings. It's the best. And then, of course, they had a cart that went around for lunch and dinner that served alcohol. Get that? And the way that the deck was set for the buffet, you could sit on a window seat and watch the coast, the ocean. And since this was an inland passage cruise, we went amongst a lot of islands. Now, one of the videos that I posted here was with the headline Alaska and a placard on it. For about 30 minutes, we cruised up out of Mendenhall Glacier and kind of showed you what the shoreline looked like, what small little icebergs looked like in the water, color of the water, zoomed into the shore, talked our way through it. So, it's gorgeous. And if you look at it on a computer monitor of decent size, you're going to be stunned in 4K what you see. Beautiful waterfalls. Out of this world. So, yeah, the cruise was well worth it. And I saw a couple of the entertainment shows. They were okay. They were okay. I actually was more entertained by listening to the various speakers and the offsite, the town hall meeting. Now, they've said that they're going to do this again next year. Now, Jeff and I won't be on that one because they said they don't want to repeat. But I would suggest you sign up early because I know that a lot of people want to do it again because it was so much fun. And out of all the places to cruise, this is my humble opinion, Alaska is the most beautiful. I've cruised in the Caribbean, Mexico, but Alaska is just gorgeous. Now, if you're not an outdoor person and you like just warm water, warm atmosphere, don't go to Alaska. Every time we fished, we wore complete rain gear. It rained a little bit, not a lot. Very little, not a lot. And then getting out in the community and talking to people, just awesome. I was in Ketchikan, and I'm in this little shop, and we had an hour and a half, so we're walking around the town just to see the sights. And I stop in this little shop, and this lady, probably my age, is got done cooking some fresh popcorn, so I'm getting a bag of popcorn. And she goes, "Where are you from?" And I said, I'm kidding with her. I go, "How do you know I'm not from Ketchikan?" And she goes, "Sir, I lived on Ketchikan for 40 years. We all know everybody. You're not from Ketchikan." I said, "No, I'm from Montana." And her eyes lit up. And she goes, "You know what? I don't want to retire here. That's one of the places I'd like to retire." And then we had a neat conversation about getting out of Ketchikan. The other thing that I learned from talking to the Alaskans is that Alaska's not as cold as everyone makes it out to be, especially in the winter. They said that there's parts of Alaska that are, it gets down to freezing, but it doesn't get really way below freezing. And there's other parts that get really, really cold. You just got to pick your spot in Alaska where you want to live. And a lot of people said, "Oh yeah, we stay here all winter. It's not that bad, blah, blah, blah." And then everyone said that, fishing season is getting down to the end in September, end of September. And then there's bear hunting. And one person that we were guided by, fascinating, they were talking about the brown bear on the island, Juneau Island, or Juneau, the city, and the island that it's on. It's not Juneau Island, it's another name, but it's 10 decibels long. Anyhow, they said that they have brown bear, similar to grizzly bear. And we started this interaction between the mainland grizzly and the brown bear on the island. And we had like a half an hour ride out, so our van was filled with 10 people that were all fishermen. So I kind of took the lead and I started asking her questions. And I said, so what's the interactions like between your brown bear and the residents on the island? She said, surprisingly, there aren't that many negative interactions. The bears seem to understand that the people here have to live here, and there's so much food on the island for the bears that they don't even really care about the people that walk away. And they talked about during the summer months, there's a constant stream of salmon, steelhead coming up the rivers, and the bear in there getting food. And then earlier in the season, almost all through the summer, there's tons of berries in the woods. And they said, yeah, we hear about the attacks in Montana all the time. And right when we were talking about that, earlier that day, or the day before, another man was attacked brutally by a grizzly bear outside of Big Sky. He was out with a friend, and they were kind of scouting for upcoming season. And he had his back turned, and a bear came on him. And he didn't have time to turn around. He had a gun, and he had bear spray. Dumb. He had the bear spray in his backpack. You never do that. You carry the bear spray on your hip where you can get to it. And he said his gun malfunctioned. And the bear tore at his trachea and tore part of his chin off. His friend scared the bear away, and he was airlifted to Bozeman and then later transferred to Salt Lake, which is everybody critical out of Montana, super critical, goes to Salt Lake. They have a much more advanced medical center there. But he's alive, and he survived. We kind of talked about that a little bit. And she said, those kind of attacks are really rare up here. Everyone's very cautious. And in fact, this very young lady, probably 30 through 25, she was carrying a .50 caliber pistol. The other guide we were with was carrying a double-aught buck shotgun with slugs. And then another guide had another big rifle with him. They take your safety very seriously. And they said that about once every other time they come to this called Game, G-A-M-E Creek, about 20 miles outside of Juneau, that we went to. And he said about every other time you'll see a bear. We didn't see any bear, thankfully. But yeah. So those were kind of the conversations, the fun time. I wish I had some more word for you about Jeff. I don't. He's in really good hands. He made it to Salt Lake, and he had an operation. He's in good hands. Advanced medical there is really good. And they made that decision in Ketchikan, which was probably a smart one. So, back home, I'll be producing some videos for you in the near future. And in the meantime, please watch our other things that are up. We've let go with some letters the other day, and then we have produced some missing persons videos just as of late. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I got some super nice gifts on the cruise from people. I mean, you guys are so nice to Angie and I. Very nice. And some of the things were a huge challenge to get home. Huge! Because we packed a lot of stuff. And we didn't have a lot of room in our luggage. And we were near weight maximums on the luggage. One lady, so nice, works in mental health, came and talked to me one time at dinner. She said, Dave, your mental health segments are so good. And you talk from the heart. And I had a friend of mine make this for you. And I thought, oh boy. And she pulls this out of her bag. This thing weighs about 7 or 8 pounds. And I'm not kidding, it is a piece of art. somebody made this. It's awesome. And took it and brought it home. And my luggage was 49.5 pounds. Just made it. The same lady also made me a glass block that had an inscription about Ben on it. And I'm really careful with this because it's so gentle. But I'm very, very grateful. So what it does is it lights up. This is kind of the block. This is cement or a glass block. It's beautiful. Kind of read what it says there. Beautiful words. That's the kind of people we had on this cruise. So many individuals. So many individuals that said super nice things, very polite, and respectful of the time and Angie had on the cruise, because they knew that was kind of a little vacation for us too. But I also understood I agreed to be on this cruise, and I had to be open to talking to anybody, and I did. The last day on the cruise, last thing I'll tell you, Angie and I are walking out of one of the main halls in the cruiseway. Somebody stops us, starts talking to us, and they're with her brother-in-law, and he introduces himself. He says, "Oh, I work for so-and-so company in the Bay Area, and I'm a research professional in the pharmaceutical side." And he goes, "You know, this guy's super, super smart." He goes, "Dave, your presentation was stellar, and you really woke me up to many facts that I needed to know," and blah, blah. Really nice man. And he goes, "Oh, you know any pharmaceutical people in the Bay Area?" He goes, "As a matter of fact, I do. One of my best friends that I went to junior high, high school, and still talk all the time today, is the CEO of a pharmaceutical company," and I won't name it, but I told him. And he goes, "Oh, you mean," and he names my friend. He goes, "Oh yeah, we work together all the time. I help him with regulatory affairs." What? I couldn't believe it. And we had a discussion about my buddy, but to think that there are super smart people in the world interested in the Bigfoot topic, to me, is refreshing. Very refreshing. I see it all the time in the UFO world. I sometimes don't see it in the Bigfoot world. But when these people came up to me and they opened up, they said how much they appreciated what I did and not what my work. It's very humbling. But every one of you I met out there, thank you. Had a great time. And if you're of the inclination, speak to your God and pray for Jeff. Paulides out.